Hello everyone. Today I am going to discuss about the foundations of deep learning concept. Okay. Now let's see the outline of today class. Okay. So this is the outline. First we will see what is learning. Okay. Which means an introduction about that deep learning concept. Okay. First, what is learning? How does that learning play a vital role in deep learning concept? Okay. So once we completed this one, then we will see what is artificial intelligence and how does this artificial intelligence is related to that deep learning concept. Okay. So once we completed these two, then we will start what is machine learning. Okay. So how does it is related to that deep learning concept and what are the concepts are is associated with the deep learning concept. Everything we will discuss in this session. Okay. So once we completed the machine learning concept, then we will start to understand the basics of deep learning. Okay. So what is deep learning? So why deep learning is required for the real world? And the difference between machine learning and deep learning. Okay. So everything we will discuss in the session. Okay. So once we understand the basics of deep learning, we will see the types of neural network. Okay. For example, what is recurrent neural network? What is convolutional neural network? Okay. So likewise, we will see the different type of neural network along with its algorithms. Okay. So once we completed the type of neural network, finally we will see what is the future of deep learning. Okay. So why we are giving more importance to the deep learning algorithms. Okay, so this is the outline for today's class. Now, let's see the introduction about learning. Okay, the introduction about the deep learning basics. Okay, so first, let's see what is learning. Okay, so what is learning? Okay, so learning it is all about acquiring acquiring of knowledge or skills through some study or experience or being taught. Okay, so there are different ways we are learning. Okay, so by our own self we are learning something from the book or something from the environment. Okay, so that is also one kind of learning. Or we may by make use of our skills, we may learn something and for teaching something or getting something from others. Okay, so everything is coming under learning. Okay, so whatever it is, acquiring the knowledge from the environment. Okay, so the environment it consists of human being or animals, whatever it is. Okay, so something we are learning from different objects. Okay, different entities from the real world. Okay, so whatever it is, the entities it may be different, but we are learning or we are acquiring the knowledge from the uh, environment. Okay, so that kind of concept we will call it as learning. Okay, because learning it is very important part of deep learning concept. Okay, so without learning, it is not a deep learning. Okay, so now let's see what is artificial intelligence. Okay, so usually artificial intelligence is the broad area. Okay, so the artificial intelligence it consists of so many subtypes. Okay, subsets. Okay, so artificial intelligence another subset is machine learning another subset is deep learning. Deep learning another subset is artificial neural network. Okay, so we can say like this: artificial neural network is the subset of deep learning. Deep learning is the subset of machine learning. Machine learning is the subset of artificial intelligence. Okay. So likewise, the chains are created. Okay. So first we need to understand the what is AI. So because AI is the broad term. Okay. So once we understand the basics about the AI, then you can easily understand what is deep learning. So how this is different from that broad area. Okay. So here, artificial intelligence. So already I explained in my previous videos. Okay. So again, I will tell you the simple thing. Okay. So here, artificial, it is all about is something is copy of nature. Okay. So we will mimic something. Okay. For example, intelligence. Okay. So here, intelligence, we are mimicking human intelligence. Okay. So intelligence means it is all about the ability to learn and understand and think. Okay, is actually we are getting from Oxford Dictionary. This is the Oxford Dictionary definition: ability to learn, ability to solve a complex problem. Okay, for example, in an agent which has the ability to solve the complex problems. Okay, so here we will try to uh, uh, make we will try to make a machine as an intelligent one. Okay, so that's why we are studying that artificial intelligence concept. Okay, we try to mimic the human behaviors. Okay, so see, simply we can say that we are trying to take the qualities from human being. That qualities is converted in the form of algorithms. So the algorithm is implemented into systems so that the systems are it is act like a human being. Okay, so that is we call it as artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is the formal definition of that artificial intelligence. Okay, so nothing is that we are taking the qualities from human behavior. So that human behavior is converted in the form of algorithms and finally implemented into systems so that the machines it is act like a human being. It mimics the human behaviors. Okay, so that this concept we will call it as artificial intelligence. Okay, for example, speech recognition, object detection, decision making. Okay, so these are all the examples are available in artificial intelligence. Speech recognition means whatever we are speaking, the machine will understand. Okay, based on that, the system will reply. And object detection means they need to identify faces, face recognition. Okay, this is also different object detection technologies. Okay, decision making. Okay, so for taking decision in a complex environment. Okay, so these are all the most complex topics are involved in artificial intelligence. Okay, artificial alone it is not enough to solve the problem, so we need to go deeper, like deep learning, so that we will get more solutions, which means we are having the ability to solve more complex problems. Okay, so already I told you that deep learning is an extension of artificial intelligence. Okay, this is the diagram explained. The deep learning is the subset of machine learning. Machine learning is the subset of artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is the evolution of deep learning. Okay, so from 1950s to 1980s, we are mostly concentrate on artificial intelligence. Okay, because that Alan Turing, he was tested, actually who was tested that Alan Turing test process. Finally, he succeeded. Finally, he proved that machines have the ability to learn something from the environment. Okay, so that is the motivation part of artificial intelligence. So from 1950s to 1980s, most of the people are concentrating on only artificial intelligence. Okay, so after 1980s, after Samuel, he coined one term that is machine learning. Okay, so why he coined the term machine learning? Because he understood that he proposed it without explicitly writing any programming. The machine has the ability to do. Machine has the ability to learn from the environment. Okay, so without explicitly writing any program, the machine has the ability to learn from the environment or write the environment. Okay, write in the environment. So that concept we will call it as a machine learning concept. Okay, so after machine learning, deep learning come to the play because deep learning is the subset of machine learning. So what is deep learning? See, deep learning also it is very important. So deep learning also is need another subset. Okay, so that subset we will call it as artificial neural network. So what is artificial neural network? Artificial neural network, it is all about the an agent which gather the information from the large volume of data sets. Okay, so that is we will call it as artificial neural network. Okay, so without artificial neural network, it is not a deep learning. Okay, so see, we need to gather some information from the large volume of data set. So we need some technology. So that technology we will call it as artificial neural network. So without artificial neural network, we cannot get any information from the large volume of data set. Usually that artificial neural network is mimic the human brain. Okay. So these are all the basics about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning concept. Okay, so from the year 1950s to 1980s, artificial play artificial play a vital role. Like I think he played vital role in these areas in these years. After 19 in between 1980s to 2010, machine learning is machine learning. Most of the people are using. Okay, so after 2010, now we are using deep learning concept. Okay, so that is the reference between artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning evolutions. Okay, now let's see what is machine learning. Okay, so already I explained. Okay, so without being explicitly programmed, the machine learning is the machine has the ability to learn the environment. Okay, the machine ability to write something into the environment. Okay, so that learning play a vital role for both machine learning concept as well as deep learning concept. Okay, so in my previous videos, I already explained machine learning play a vital role for developing self-driving cars and practical speech recognition, effective web search. Okay, so likewise, there are many advantages are there if you are using the machine learning algorithms. Okay, so because see nowadays we are day by day we are using the machine learning algorithms without knowing. Without understanding the machine learning algorithms. Okay, so by day we are using machine learning algorithm, but we don't know we are currently using these kind of machine learning algorithm for many applications. Okay, so this is why the machine learning play a vital role for human lives also. Okay, so which means which helps to improve the human lives. Okay, so that's why machine learning is part of nowadays it is part of human being also. Okay, so because the machine learning is needed for more tasks, so that are too complex for humans to code directly. Okay, so if you try to write some code manually now, it is too complex. Okay, so even 500 lines of code also it is very difficult to write it. We need some time to write all the codes. Nowadays, with the help of that machine learning algorithms, the machine itself writing too complex codes. Okay, so that is the advantage of machine learning algorithms. Okay, so manually it will take some time. Also, it's very difficult. It's a complex one. Okay, so this is why machine learning uh, play a vital role in real world applications. Okay, now let's see the different type of learning approaches. Okay, so in my previous videos also I explained what is the different type of learning. Okay, so supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning, ensemble learning, and semi-supervised learning. Okay, so likewise, a different type of learning approaches are available. Okay, so what is supervised learning? Already I told you, supervised learning mostly focused on labeled data. Okay, so we are giving some training to that raw data, so that the raw data it will make it as a labeled data. So whenever the labeled data is stored in a particular data set, by default, what will happen? So we need to build a model, build a prediction model. So that model which helps to that model is helps to check with the test data. It is matching, which means the prediction model uses the labeled data and finally fill the missing values. Okay, so that is predict the missing values. Okay, so that kind of learning we will call it as supervised learning. Okay, which means based on the experience, based on the labeled data, so we can identify the relevant information from the training data set. Okay, so whenever the data is missing in the test data, so we simply get the information from the training data with the help of some prediction model. Finally, we will delete. Okay, so this entire process we will call it as supervised learning concept. But whereas in unsupervised learning concept, no need to, there is no label, unlabeled data only available. Okay, so unlabeled data. Okay, so based on their experience they may grouped. For example, clustering, classifications. Okay, so clustering, association. Okay, so these kind of things are happening with the help of unsupervised learning concept. For example, suppose I want to buy some product. Okay, like milk, sugar. Yes, whenever I am buying that milk, by default, I may purchase sugar also. That is the association of milk. Okay. So likewise, without knowledge of, without labeled anything, based on my experience, I will purchase associated. Okay. So that kind of technique we will call it as unsupervised learning concept. Okay. And what about the reinforcement learning concept? Reinforcement learning, it is what it is all about. It is working based on the reward and punishment techniques. Okay, so reward means whenever an algorithm working properly, they will get some reward, which means based on the feedback, they will give award and penalty. So until we achieve our expected output, we will continue. Okay. So for every time we are trying to improve the prediction result. Okay. So that kind of learning we will call it as reinforcement learning concept. These are the basic learning approaches available in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay. Now, what are the problems are is associated with machine learning? Why we are going to deep learning? Okay, so now let's see. These are all the common problems are happening. Okay, for example, if we are taking that supervised learning, classification is the biggest problem. Clustering is the biggest problem. Regression, anomaly detection. Okay, so there are lots of problems are there whenever we are implementing the machine learning algorithm into real world problems. Okay, so in order to solve these kind of problems, we need some other technique like deep learning. Okay, so deep learning mostly solve many problems. Okay, in comparison with the machine learning algorithm. Okay, see, machine learning algorithms mostly work on moderate data set, but whereas in deep learning concept, whenever the data is more, the data set size is huge. Okay, number of records are more, it will give the accurate prediction result. Okay, so that is the difference between machine learning and deep learning. Okay, so whenever we in comparison with machine learning, deep learning provide more accurate result. Okay, so that is the outcome for, that is the expected outcome for machine learning as well as deep learning. We need to predict the accurate result. Okay, so that accurate result, it is the basic requirement for both machine learning model and deep learning model. Okay, so machine learning model having some of the problem like classification, clustering, and regression anomaly detection problems, so that we will move to the deep learning concept. Okay, so why we are studying the deep learning concept? Okay, because already we know that machine learning play a vital role for many real world applications, even though why we are giving more importance to this deep learning concept. Okay, so now the first point is robust, the strength of the technologies. What is the strength of the technologies? So see, suppose if you are using some machine learning algorithm, we need to feature, we need to do feature extraction. Okay, but whereas in deep learning concept, no need to do any feature extraction. Okay, so without feature extraction, these deep learning models are working very well on raw data. Okay, see, so deep learning model play work on few data. Okay, so that is the first advantage. See, whenever we are doing some feature extraction, so there may be a possibility for getting some error or there's some side effect also is happening. Okay, but if you are using that deep learning models, so directly we are ignoring many problems. Okay, so initially we are ignoring many problems. That is the good sign for deep learning concept. Okay, so we can get more accurate result whenever we are executing that model, building that deep learning model. Okay, so see, manually we cannot do anything. So the automatically that the automatically it was learned. Okay, so automatically it was learned. That is very much required for predict some accurate result. Okay, so the first thing is no need for any feature extractions. Directly we, it is work from the raw data. And after that, automatically the data has the ability to learn itself so that it may give more proper data and give the finally we get the accurate result. Okay, so that is the first point for going to deep learning concept. Okay, now let's see the second one, generalizable. Okay, so what is generalizable? Suppose I want to uh, translate. I want to go some other country. Okay, so I don't know other languages. By default, what will happen? It is very difficult. Okay, so we need some intermediator to translate from our language to their languages. Okay, that is generalizable. Wherever we go, we need some technology help to convert from our languages into some other languages. Okay, so if we are applying these kind of learning technique, deep learning concept, so we will get more uh, solutions. Okay, so we may resolve many problems. Okay, a lot of manual rebels also is reduced. Okay, no need for any third party for helping to convert from one language to another language. Okay, so the generalizable one, that is another reason for we are going to deep learning concept. And third one, scalable. So what is scalable? See, whenever the data set, the performance increases with more data, so that data, okay, therefore that method is massively parallelized. Okay, which means we are getting more accurate prediction result. Okay, so that is also another advantages of deep learning concept. Okay, so we can do iterate very faster so that we are getting some quality prediction result. Okay, so this is why we need the deep learning concept. Okay, so robust, strength, generalizable one, more generalizable one, and also it is a scalable one. Okay, so these are the basic reason we are move to the deep learning concept. Now let's see one by one. Okay, one by deep learning applications. Okay, so the first one, deep learning in speech recognition. Okay, so what is speech recognition? So already we know that whatever we are speaking, the machine has the ability to understand our speaking. Finally, it will respond. Okay. For example, like ChatGPT, whenever we are giving the machine will understand our question. Finally, it will give the answer. Okay. Now, one professor, his name is Andrew, he has long predicted that speech recognition goes from 95 percentage to 99 percentage. Okay, so whenever we are applying that deep learning models, so the accurate results also increasing from 95 percentage to 99 percentage. Okay, that is more than that is almost we are nearby our expected prediction results. Okay. Usually, we will say that it is in a format that is easy to process. We will feed it to a deep neural network. Okay, so in order to implement the deep neural network concept, we will get more accurate result. Okay, so this diagram shows. Okay, so the input is there, that is 20 milliseconds length of audio. Okay, so it is fed into a recurrent neural network. Okay, so finally we will get different likelihood result. Okay, likelihood A, B, C, and D. Okay, so there are many results that we are getting. So if we are applying some Markov chain models or any optimization method, we will get the exact one. Okay, so among the result, we will get the best result. Okay, so which means whenever we are asking something into that machine, the machine will respond at some accurate result. Okay, so that is the hidden meaning of that deep speech recognition. Whenever we are implementing that speech recognition application into deep learning concept, we will get more accurate result. Okay, that is the first thing. And second one, computer vision. Deep learning in computer visions. Okay, so what is computer vision? So usually the computer visions are detecting the object. Okay, for example, I want to detect suppose I want to make some self-driving cars. So what will happen? Mostly the self-drivings are concentrated on computer vision concept because whenever the machines are driving, it is very much required to see which are all the objects are moving in front of the car or in the back side of the car, left side of the car, and right side of the car. Most of the time, back side of the car we don't see. Whenever we record, we will see. Okay. So likewise, detecting proper object is very important. Okay. So whenever we are implementing the deep learning concept, so we may solve many problems related to computer vision concept. Okay. So there are so many layers are involved when this is for computer vision, we will give image as the input. Okay. So image as the input. Finally, we will get some fully connected layers. Okay. So that we will solve many problems. And finally, another application like natural language processing. Okay, so deep learning in natural language processing. Okay, so in recent years, so there are several big improvements are happening in the natural language processing application. Okay, so these are all the basic things about the natural language processing. There are four levels are there. Okay, speech. We will speech something in the form of words. The word is converted into syntax. Syntax it may be converted into semantics. Okay, so there are some tools also we are using like part of speech entities and parsing. Okay, and the applications are machine translation from one language to another language, sentiment analysis. So there are some positive, negative, and neutral values are identified. Okay, so dialogue agents are interact with each other, and finally question answering like chat GPT. Okay, so these are all the applications are utilizing that natural language processing. Okay, so the best example is chat GPT. Okay, so this is the big improvement happening with the help of deep learning concept. Okay, so here neural network can accurately determine the structure of sentences supporting interpretation. Okay, so for every word and every space and every logical expression, uh, it is we will call it as a vector. Okay, see whenever we are comparing two vectors, we will get single vector. Okay, so it compresses something. Okay, it reduces the space. Also, it will give the more interpretation result. Okay, so whenever we are using that neural network concept, we can accurately determine the structure of the sentences, because determining structure of the sentence is also one of the problem in natural language processing concept. Okay, so that problem is resolved with the help of neural network. Okay, usually that neural networks are mimic the behavior of human brain. Okay, so this is all about deep learning in natural language processing. Okay, now let's see what actually is deep learning is doing in the real world application, real world problems. Okay, so this is the formal definition of deep learning concept. Okay, so deep learning is the subfield of machine learning, already we discussed. So which is concerned with the learning algorithm, because learning algorithm is very much required. So that derive meaning of out of the data by using a hierarchy of multiple layers that mimic the neural network of our brain. Okay, so already I explained. Without without neural network, it is not a deep learning, because with the help of that artificial neural network, we are gathering the information from the large volume of data. Finally, we will do some predictions. Okay, so without artificial neural network, it is not a deep learning concept. Okay, so that artificial neural network, it mimics the human brain. So human brain usually consists of neurons. Okay, so here neuron is equal to perceptron. Okay, that is the only difference. See, it mimics the human brain. Whatever the human brains are doing, we will try to mimic. We will try to mimic the human brain. Okay. So, for example, whenever I'm hearing something, so automatically my informations are stored into our brain. Okay, automatically learn. See, whenever I saw something, automatically stored into my brain. Okay, so there is no limit for storage. Human brain storage size is we cannot predict. It's an infinite one. Until we die, the informations are stored. Okay, so this is the formal definition of deep learning concept. Okay, so hierarchy of multiple layers. For example, there are three type of layers are there: input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. Okay, So whenever we are giving input with the help of the input layer, we will give, and finally it is transformed with the help of hidden layers, and then we will get the output layer. Finally, we will do some prediction. If we are getting more output layers, we will combine it, and finally we will get the best output layer. Okay, predictions. So this is, we call it as deep learning concept. Okay. So these kind of learning algorithms are what we call artificial neural network. Usually already so many times I discussed artificial, it is all about is something is the copy of nature. So neural network, already know that neural network is mimics the human brain. So here artificial neural network, it is all about is trying to copy the nature of human being. Okay, so here try to copy the nature of human being. Okay, something is copy of nature. So here something means brain, human brain. Okay, so human brain, we try to make a copy. Okay, so we will try to mimic the human brain. Okay, so that is, we will call it as artificial neural network. Okay, so the main purpose of artificial neural network is gathering information from the environment, large volume of data set. Okay. So the benefit of this kind of algorithm is automatically to learn, and for every time they improve themselves, and finally it will give some very good prediction result. Okay, so that is the advantages of this artificial neural network. Okay, so this is why the deep learning uh, works. Okay, now let's see the basics of deep learning. Okay, so now how does deep learning work? That is very important. Okay, usually this deep neural network, it consists of various layers. Okay, so what are the layers are there? Input layer, hidden layer, and output layer, like this. Okay, so for each layer, you transform the input data into more abstract representations. So what are the abstract representation? Like edge, nose, face, okay, weight. Okay, so these are all the abstract representations are mentioned, determined. Okay, so usually the output layer combines those features, and finally to make the predictions. Okay, some input, there are so many input layers are there. Okay, or let us assume that only one input layer is there. So that with the help of that input layer, uh, the data is transferred through many hidden layers, and finally it will give some uh, predictive result. Okay, so that prediction result is shown in output layer. Okay, so this is the way the deep neural networks are working. Okay, three layers are there: input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. We are giving some data through some input layer, and finally it will process to the help of hidden layers. Once the process is happening, what will have completed, then it will be delivered as a output that will be shown in the output layer. Okay, so this is the way the deeper neural networks are working. Okay, so this is the definition of that neural network and perceptron. Okay, so in the context of neural network, the perceptron is an artificial neuron. Okay, so which means the perceptron, it is all about, it mimics the neuron behavior. It mimics the neuron behavior. Okay, so the most basic form of an artificial neural network. Okay, for example, neuron is equal to neural network. Perceptron neural network is equal to artificial neural network. Okay, so neuron and perceptron. So what is perceptron? So perceptron, it is all about, it mimics the neuron behavior. Okay, for example, so only one single unit. Okay, so whenever we are giving some single unit, by default, what will happen? It sums up all the hidden layers, and finally it will produce some output result. Okay, so perceptron is usually a single layer uh, uh, neuron. Okay, so single layer neuron. Okay, so this is we will call it as perceptron and artificial neural network. Okay, so neuron is mimic the perceptron mimic the neuron behavior, whereas artificial neural network is mimic the neural behavior. Okay, so artificial means already we discussed so many times. Okay, this is, we will call it as neural network and perceptrons. Now let's see the training process. So what are all the training process are there? Okay, so there are 4 steps are involved for doing training. Okay, usually these kind of deep neural networks are working based on the back propagation algorithm. Okay, which means based on the based on the error signals, it will do the predictions. Okay, for example, so here it learns by generating on the error signals. Okay, so with the help of some back propagation algorithm, after that it measure the difference between the prediction of the network and the desired values. Okay, so the measurement is very important. So here error is one kind of measurement. With the help of that error rate, so we can find out the predictions. Okay, so for every term we are changing the weights with the help of some back propagation algorithms. Whenever we are doing some modification in the weights, or sometimes we will call it as parameters, so the output we will get the accurate result. Okay, so this is the way the training process are happen in the deep neural network. Okay, do you understand? Now I hope that you understand. Okay, how does this training process are happening in the deep neural network? Okay, so the thing is, whenever we are doing some modification in the weight with the help of some back propagation algorithm, so uh, we will get some more accurate result. Okay, so this is the steps are involved for the training process. So initially sampled labeled data is there. Okay, so for every time, so the sampled labeled data is forwarded through some network to get some predictions. After that, it will apply to some backpropagation algorithm. So the errors are identified. So whenever the errors are identified, based on that, we will change the parameters, which means we will update the weights, and finally we get the more prediction through some labeled data. Okay, so this is the training. This is the way the training process are happened. So what are all the requirements are there for doing this kind of training process? The first one, large data set with good quality, okay, especially for input output map, because 3 layers are involved: input layer, hidden layer, and the output layer. So we need large volume of data set with good quality of data. Why we need large volume of data set? Because in deep learning, whenever the size of the data increasing, data set sizes are increasing, by default, it will provide more accurate result. Okay, so that it is very much required for large data set with some good quality. Okay, so no need to, we need to make sure with ourselves with that data set. Okay, so we'll get that good quality, everything we will decide on. Okay, and that is the first requirement. What about the second requirement? It must be measurable and also describable goals. Okay, which means define the cost. Why it is measurable? Okay, suppose if we are applying some back propagation algorithm, measurements are play a vital role. Okay, so in the previous slide we discussed measuring the errors as well as the desired output. Okay, it is very important, because for each and every time we are updating the weights, whenever we are updating the weights, we will get more accurate result. So that measurable and desirable objective is very much required. Weights. Okay, so this is another requirement for this training process. And what about the third one? Enough computing power. Okay, see, traditional computing power is not enough to run some of the TensorFlow like packages. Okay, so we need some high-end power instances like GPU. Okay, so graphical processing usage. Okay, so this kind of processor, computing power processor, it is very much required to run the deep neural network, so that we will get accurate result. Otherwise, we may not get accurate result. If possible, go through Google Colab. There are whenever we are using some this kind of deep neural network, we are changing the computing power. Okay, so that's why this is the reason people are changing the computing power. Then only we will get the accurate result. Otherwise, it will take so much time. We are not getting the exact predicted result. Okay, so that's why this is also very important requirement for deep neural network. Okay, and what is the last one? So it excels in tasks where the base unit like pictures and birds has very little meaning itself. But if you are combining these two, it may provide that useful meaning. Okay, so that is also very, very important. Okay, so whenever we are doing the training process, we need to combine one or more items. Okay, then only we will get more useful, more predictive result, as well as we'll get more useful meaning of that particular words. Okay, that is very, very important. Okay, like if you are similar to these vectors, if you are comparing two vectors, it is converted into single vector like this. Okay, so these are all the basic requirement of deep learning concept. Okay, now let's see how is deep learning different from machine learning concept. Okay, so this diagram shows the fundamental difference between the deep learning and the traditional meaning. Okay, so the fundamental difference is data set. Okay, whenever the amount of data set is increasing, the size of the data set is increasing, older learning algorithms are perform slightly. The deeper learning algorithms are perform better in comparison with the older learning algorithms. Okay, so that is the fundamental difference between deep learning and machine learning algorithm. Okay, so the first thing is when suppose the data set size is very, very huge, deep learning algorithms provide some accurate results in comparison with the older learning algorithm. Okay, so the performances are increasing. It's a direct proportional based on the which means the size of the data set is directly proportional to its performance. Okay, so that whenever the size of the data set is increasing, by default the prediction of the deep learning algorithm is accurate one. But whereas in the older learning algorithms, it's not a correct one. Okay, we are not saying that it's directly proportional to data set. Okay, so that is the main fundamental difference between deep learning and machine learning. So in addition to this, there are so many differences are there. Okay. For example, if you are using that machine learning, most of the time, the experts are identified. So the experts are identified some of the features and applied it to that particular model. Okay. So sometimes we are written manually so that it will take some time. So there will be a possibility for error also happening. Okay. But whereas in deep learning algorithm, the algorithm itself is learning some high level features from the data and information. Okay, so that by default, what will happen? It reduces enormous human introduction. Okay, which means it reduces the task of developing new feature extraction for every problem. But in machine learning algorithm, for every time, manually we are extracting all those things. Okay, but whereas in deep learning, from the help of some information, the algorithm model is learning. Okay, learning high-level features and finally implemented into that particular algorithm, getting then we'll get some accurate result. Okay, so that is the another difference between deep learning and the machine learning concept. So also, deep learning algorithms are taking long time to train. Okay, but whereas, for example, ResNet, this algorithm, it will take 2 weeks to completely for train completely from the scratch. Okay, but whereas in machine learning algorithm, it takes much less time to train. Okay, for example, it ranging from a few seconds to few hours. Okay, so here machine learning algorithms are slightly better than deep learning algorithm with respect to time. Okay, so learning algorithms takes longer time to train, but whereas in machine learning algorithms, it takes very much less time. Okay, so that is also another difference between deep learning and machine learning. Okay, so till now we are completed the basic introduction about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and type of learning, and deep learning basics. Okay, now let's see the type of neural network. Okay, so there are many type of artificial neural networks are there. Okay, so these are all the important types of artificial neural network. So the first one, feed forward neural network, and second one, recurrent neural network. Okay, so what is feed forward neural network? So the feed forward neural network, is a simple type of neural network. Okay, so whenever we are giving some input, okay, so input with the help of some input layer, so it will transform through that hidden layers, and finally we get some result in the output layer. Okay, so in the feed forward neural network concept, it may not generate any cycle path. Okay, it may not generate any cycle path. No cycle paths are involved. Directly, it will provide the result. So that this kind of neural network, we will call it as a simple neural network or feed-forward neural network. There is no cycles are involved. Okay, so directly we will get, it will provide the result. Okay, so this kind of result we will call it as feed-forward neural network. Okay, and there are different type of networks are there. Okay, for example, that feed-forward neural network, it consists of convolutional neural network, autoencoder, probabilistic neural network, time delay neural network. Likewise, many subtype of feed-forward neural networks are available in deep learning concept. Okay, so in future we will see in a separate session what is convolutional neural network and what is autoencoder and what is probabilistic neural network and time delay neural network concept. Okay. Now let's see recurrent neural network. So what is recurrent neural network? Why we need these kind of things? So in comparison with the feed-forward neural network, recurrent neural networks are generating cycle paths, okay, and generating some cycles, and finally it will provide some accurate result. Okay, so which means these kind of recurrent neural networks are learning complex patterns. Okay, usually these kind of neural networks are learning complex patterns. Whenever it is learning complex patterns, so that it may reduce huge amount of burden of human beings. Okay, also it will provide accurate result. Okay, so the only one difference, the feed forward neural networks are there is no cycle path, but whereas in the recurrent neural net, mostly generated some cycle path and finally provide some accurate results. In addition to this, it has the ability to learn complex data. Okay, so which means these kind of networks are having some very good update functions. Okay, update equation functions. So that with that helps to improve the prediction result. Okay, so usually whenever the errors are identified, whenever we are changing some parameters, so which means with the help of some update function, we are changing the parameters. Okay, finally it will improve the performance again and again, and at the end we will get more accurate result. Okay, so this is the main difference between feed forward network and the recurrent neural network. That recurrent neural network, it consists of long short-term memory algorithm, fully recurrent neural network, simple recurrent network, stochastic neural network. Likewise, many subtype of recurrent neural networks are available in artificial neural network and deep learning concept. Okay, so this is all about types of neural network. Now let's see the future of deep learning concept. Okay, see, usually whenever we are using deep learning concept, so we will take large volume of data. Okay, so for day by day we are getting huge amount of data from the user side, end user side. Like if you are taking that Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, okay, by day we are giving huge amount of data to their companies. So that is, we call it as big data. Okay, so most of the time we are utilizing the big data, and finally we will do some activities in the deep learning. Okay, see, whenever the data set sizes are increasing, you will get more prediction result. Okay, so what is the main problem for that huge amount of data? Learning is the main problem. Okay, learning, it is very important. So in deep learning, we are utilizing the artificial neural network concept and finally gather the information from the large volume of data set. So here, learning means there are different type of learning available. Okay, for example, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning, ensemble learning. Okay, so ensemble learning, different models are there. All the models are providing their own prediction result. So among the prediction results, we want to find out the best result. Okay, that is, we call it as ensemble learning. Okay, so here, suppose if you are taking supervised learning concept. So what is supervised learning concept? Whenever some data sets are there, okay, which means that is we call it as a raw data set. Okay, so that data set we will give some training to that raw data set. We will give is very much required to give the training to that raw data set, which means all the we must train all the data in the form of labeled values. Okay, so if you are taking the big data, if you are taking some huge amount of data set, huge size of data set, so it is very difficult to give the training. Which means it is very difficult to label all the data. That is the problem. Okay, so if the data is labeled, then only it is working properly for classification and regression problems. Otherwise, it may not work. But it is very, very difficult and it will take some time. Also, we need to spend more time on it. So that usually people are ignoring the super learning concept. But whereas in unsupervised learning concept, no need any labeled data, no need any labeled data. So based on the experience, they will decide. Okay, so that's why in future, most of the time, the people are utilizing, they will try to utilize in the unsupervised learning concept. Okay, because whenever the data is growing, unsupervised learning is the best option for using in the deep learning concept. Okay, because sizes are increasing, it's very difficult because sometimes it's unrealistic one for doing something into the data set. But whereas in unsupervised learning concept, no need to do anything for making as a labeled one. Okay, so without a label, without anything, we are replacing the raw data. Because feature extraction also is not available in deep learning, so we can directly take the raw data and finally utilize for making the prediction. So that unsupervised learning the future for deep learning concept. Okay, so that is the first thing we have to remember that. And the second one, so usually we are most manually we have written so many artificial algorithmic intelligence code. Okay, so that is softwares as well as we are writing some geometric intelligence codes. Okay, like deep learning codes. Okay, so these kind of things are taking some time. Also, we may not get some accurate result. But instead of these two, so we are in future we will get some reasoning, abstraction abilities, and informal intuition and pattern recognition capabilities. Okay, so with the help of some algorithm intelligence, it may provide some reasoning and abstraction capabilities. Okay, and also the geometric intelligence, it will provide some informal intuition and pattern recognition capabilities. Okay, so if you are combining these two, so this would be a closer to how an actual human brain works. Okay, if you are comparing these two intelligence, so we may very closer to the actual human brain work concept. Okay, so that is the ultimate objective of deep learning concept. Okay, so this is all about the foundation of deep learning. Thank you.